Today I'm joined with Thomas and Penny Power. They both founded the UK's first social network for business academy 13 years ago, and Penny's the driving force behind the Digital Business Britain Manifesto. Today I get the pleasure of asking them a few questions. The manifesto states that we should value the social capital that's created by individuals. I've heard a lot about social capital recently. How would you describe it, and how can individuals or businesses measure their social capital?
The reason I've become so interested in social capital is that what organisations and individuals usually invest in is their human capital, their knowledge, what they can put on their CV, their skills, their qualifications, and then their financial capital, the assets they have. And very few actually look at their social capital. And social capital, I think, is an equally important, if not more increasingly important asset in an organisation and in an individual. And social capital is about how you can achieve things through people, and the people that believe in you around you. And I'm particularly interested in it because there's a rise in individual capitalism, where now with the internet and with growing unemployment, individuals need to start creating their own brand. And if they can do that on a base of people knowing and liking and following them for what they contribute rather than for what they sell, then that person is more likely to follow them throughout their entire life. And so, you know, in the manifesto, we're pledging that organisations and individuals need to increase their skills around building their social capital. In terms of measuring it, there are various ways now through algorithms that are being created, which are fantastic, aren't they?
Yeah, you've got things like Clout and Peer Index, which are primitive, but they're starting to measure your connection in all these networks. So they are kind of like a measure of your social capital, but they're very basic. Empire Avenue, and they're gradually expanding, but they're the start of something. You could measure it by the number of followers you had, you could measure it by the response you could get over the telephone when you ask people to do something, you could measure it by how many email responses you get when you say, I need some help with this. As Penny says, it's social capital is your ability to get things done through other people or with other people.
What would you say was a good Clout score for a small business looking to have, or a good Peer Index score?
Well, I would say a minimum of 50, and if they're very serious, into the 60s, 70s, and if they're hyper into the 80s. But a minimum of 50 shows that you have decided to engage. The more you share, the more you receive. But that's a cultural shift which is taking our society a lot longer than I thought it would take. I mean, it's 17 or 18 years already, and people are still uncomfortable about sharing data. I find the more data I share, the more stuff I get.
I was interviewed last week on Friday by Huffington Post in New York, and they wanted to interview me about have HR and recruitment companies started to use Clout as a measurement for giving a job. And we're starting to see it, but not heavily yet in the UK. But they're saying that in New York and in the coasts of America, they're starting to see that a lot. So can you imagine you know, a recruitment company choosing whether to place you forward for a job based on your Clout score? That really makes people have to learn this subject.
Like all of these things like Peer Index and Clout, Empire Avenue, all these social measures, they are crude and primitive. But they always take about 5 years to 7 years to settle in. Mm-hmm. So they only really started in 2009. So by 2015 it will be normal to refer to your social score. But quite right now in 2011 it's a bit weird. But it's just a new form of currency. Like I've got an MBA from London Business School, or I've got an MBA from Stanford, or I've got a degree from Oxford or Cambridge. It's just a new form of currency. It's a ticket.
And it's your social capital's currency.
But if you haven't got that score, it confirms that you've chosen not to engage. But if you've chosen not to engage, then you haven't agreed to play the game. Well, then you're going to be pushed to the side.